I mean, we're being corralled into this box where we either have to hate Vladimir Putin and believe everything evil that's said about him and love Ukraine, and there's no in between. And that reminds me a lot of, you're either, a white supremacist, or you go with the Democrat narrative on everything under the sun. Trying to uncover how Ukraine is at the center of this cult of globalists, how it is a center of money laundering, for the oligarchs and their allies in the United States, how it is at the center of Russia collusion and that whole false narrative. I mean, there's as much interference here as you could possibly imagine before you even get to Hunter Biden, Nancy Pelosi, John Kerry, and Mitt Romney, and all of their children who are employed, who earn millions from Ukrainian gas companies. 16 years as a correspondent at 60 Minutes in CBS, 35 years in journalism. Did I ever think I'd get to this place? No, I certainly did not. But I can tell you, after spending 2 decades on the battlefield, that I'm disgusted by the coverage of Ukraine and the blatant manipulation of the facts and distortion of history and everything else. I mean, I'm going to say at the beginning, and I'm going to say it once, nobody wants the people of Ukraine to suffer. There are innocent people there. They were caught up in the fighting, as they are in every war, and it's heartbreaking to see them suffer. However, what I am also very much aware of is that there are people in this country and other places who are quite happy to bring that suffering to all of our doors and to insist on forcing this into World War, a bigger world war and a broader conflict, rather than de-escalate and deal with it honestly. And sure, there's disinformation on both sides, no doubt. The Russians are good at it, and so are we. However, there are certain things here that are true, and we need to ask more questions about them. For example, when Putin says that he's going to rid the Ukrainian military of its Nazis, and we all jump up and down and say, oh my gosh, that's not true, because look at all the hundreds of thousands of Jewish victims of the Holocaust. Well, absolutely, there were hundreds of thousands of Jewish victims of the Holocaust. And you know what? They weren't just killed by Germans. A lot of them were killed by Ukrainians, because Western Ukraine backed the Nazis and was a headquarters of the Nazi SS. And when you see that black sun of the occult on the uniforms of Ukrainian soldiers, and by the way, not just one battalion, not just a handful of soldiers, look at the pictures of female Ukrainian soldiers being lionized and, sort of worshipped by the US media, right? They've got that black sun of the occult. Now, why is that significant? Well, that was another emblem of the SS, wasn't it? Because there was an occult dimension to the SS that we, again, don't like to talk about typically in our history. And why is that significant? Well, go to the Azov battalion in the Ukrainian military that is funded by the United States and by NATO. Not only do they have the black occult as the background of their logo, but they have the sideways lightning symbol of the Nazi SS. So these are not random things. They're not arbitrary. They go to the foundational core of who this unit is. And I love how Jen Psaki and the media and all these other puppets love to say, oh, well, it's just one unit. Imagine if there was a unit in the United States military that had the emblems of the Nazi SS as its defining, logo, and was pictured holding up, swastika flags as the Azov battalion is pictured. I encourage everybody to look at the work of a journalist, an American journalist in Ukraine, who has been there for years and years and years, and has done extraordinary work trying to uncover how Ukraine is at the center of this cult of globalists, how it is a center of money laundering, for the oligarchs and their allies in the United States, how it is at the center of Russia collusion and that whole false narrative, how it was, amazingly Ukrainian dossier, right? That Paul Manafort behind bars, Alexander Chalupa, the Democratic operative, who was very active with Ukraine. No surprise that it was the Ukrainian ambassador who broke with diplomatic protocol and wrote that he would never, Ukraine did not back Donald Trump in the 2016 election. Unsurprisingly, that Eric Carmen, what's the moron's name? Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. Boy, he's
He's
That's a
rearing his
doozy
ugly
right
head
there.
again
You
too.
know, yeah, he's the
Victoria
guy at
Nuland.
the Ukrainian sham impeachment trial that's supposed to be
Yep.
telling Donald Trump what his Ukrainian policy could be, and the man is obviously a spy. I mean, for crying in a bucket, people wake up. Did anyone watch the TV series The Americans? You don't think it's extraordinary that just as we are reading all these fawning profiles about, the amazing Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, who just happens to have come from the Ukraine as a child and was found under a bridge with his twin brother when an American photographer appeared as they were sheltering from the rain and took photographs and then documented all of the significant moments in Lieutenant Colonel Vindman's life. I mean, for goodness sake, where is counterintelligence? There's a reason that man was escorted from the White House at the end of that theatrical trial that was meant to stop any journalist from looking at Ukraine any further, right? Because they put John Solomon's head on a stake and they tried to roast him, right? Because he was right. Because what he was reporting was true. Because the Open Society Foundation, through the National Endowment for Democracy, and all of these other fake NGOs that are nothing more than brown shirts and SS rolled into one, were running their radical policy through the United States Embassy, through USAID, using our tax dollars to slit our own throats. Now they're covering their tracks in Ukraine, not just hiding all the evidence of, John Kerry's son, Biden's son, Nancy Pelosi's son, Mitt Romney's son, by the way, who is as disgusting as the rest of them. Not only are they covering their tracks, hiding all the evidence of the involvement in Russia collusion, hiding the evidence of the bioweapons facilities that the U.S. has been funding there. And yes, some of that was left over from the Soviet days. Some of that has been turning them from bioweapons facilities into public health facilities. But that, again, is not the whole truth. That is, again, not the whole story, right? So they're covering their tracks in Ukraine. They're hiding evidence. They're exploiting the Ukrainian people to do so. Nobody is trying to de-escalate. They've got this moron as a leader who is, was an entertainer who was obviously selected because he's out there in stilettos and black leather pants doing spoof videos for Dancing with the Stars. And now we're all supposed to fawn at the altar of Zelensky, right? When he could be doing any number of things. There's all kinds of fake moments and heroes. I love how they have the ghost of Kiev, right? Who supposedly killed all these Russians. I mean, for crying in a bucket, wake up, people. Yes, there is real suffering in Ukraine. There's a real war going on, just as there was, there were real issues that were being protested in the wake of George Floyd's death, but they're being exploited by evil, horrible people who want to rule over all of us and enslave us. And if you don't think that's true, you think that's a conspiracy theory, I got no time for you. I got no time for you. We are past the ninth mile. We're sitting at the gates of Auschwitz, and we're arguing about whether the smoke coming out of the ovens is climate change. Come on.
Exactly. Well, that's perfect, Laura. In fact, it's obvious that Lara Logan has no agenda but the truth.
Boom.
Boom. Big time. Exactly.
That was that, ladies and gentlemen.
Perfect.
You've just survived tactical nukes dropped by Laura.
Laura, great to have you this morning. I wanted to start with this breaking news overnight that it appears, and there you are, you popped up for us. It's so great to see you. The Daily Mail has a very interesting story that's saying that Vladimir Putin essentially may be running out of bullets, that he might have a week and a half, 2 weeks max. He's losing warplanes, tanks, all the rest of it. He obviously went into this thinking he was going to bulldoze his way through Ukraine. He's obviously caused a lot of destruction. Don't want to minimize the fact there's over 2 million refugees. But this has not gone as well as Vladimir Putin expected.
I don't buy it for a second, Ed, I'll be honest with you. I really think that there's so much misinformation. We've never really seen anything like it. I mean, I've been covering wars now for 35 years, and I have never seen people with their nails done in the Ukrainian flag, right? I mean, we're being corralled into this box where we either have to hate Vladimir Putin and believe everything evil that's said about him and love Ukraine, and there's no in between. And that reminds me a lot of, you're either, a white supremacist, or you go with the Democrat narrative on everything under the sun. So Vladimir Putin knew exactly what he was doing when he went into Ukraine. The Russian military isn't perfect. They, for example, I've spoken to multiple defense specialists and intelligence specialists. from a Defense Intelligence Agency who've studied the Russian military for years. They do have a difficulty mounting complex air operations because they do very little training hours in comparison to, for example, the United States air assets, right, our fighter jet pilots. But Russia is not struggling. What Russia has done from the very beginning has been very strategic. They didn't go straight to Kiev. They went to all those bioweapons laboratories that are scattered all over the country. Some of them they built, so they know where they are. They've known where they are since the Soviet Union, because under the Defense Threat Reduction Program, we went in after the fall of the Soviet Union and supposedly turned those facilities from bioweapons labs into public health labs. Although, you know, these days it's hard to believe anything that our leaders tell us, because they've lied about COVID, they lied about Russia collusion, they lied about the Ukraine impeachment trial, and there's so much more going on in Ukraine that nobody is talking about. You see such dishonesty when it comes to the history of Ukraine. You see dishonesty when it comes to the Azov Battalion, which is funded by the US and NATO. I mean, you can find pictures of them online holding up the NATO flag and the swastika at the same time. Their own emblem contains the black sun of the occult, which was a Nazi SS emblem. And it also contains the sideways, you know, lightning insignia of the SS. I mean, this is on throughout the Ukrainian military. You can see that black sun of the occult on their body armor, even on the female soldiers who are paraded in front of the world as being, you know, such an example of Ukraine's independence and spirit and nobility. Even they are wearing the black sun of the occult. And, you know, the White House wants you to believe, well, this doesn't matter, it's just a small number of troops. It's not true. The Azov Battalion has been murdering its way through eastern Ukraine. We don't want to admit this. This was why Crimea voted for independence. This is why Crimea wanted to be with Russia. Because we in the media, in the Western media and in the West, won't acknowledge the reality of what's gone on. Western Ukraine backed the Nazis. It was a headquarters for the Nazi SS. The CIA under Allen Dulles actually gave immunity from prosecution to the Nazis of Ukraine from the Nuremberg trials. So there's a long history of the United States and our intelligence agencies funding and arming Nazis in Ukraine. These are not like new neo-Nazi groups that sprung up. These are the actual Nazis from the Second World War, who, if you go back to the Nuremberg trials, said that they were planning for a 1,000-year Reich. And so you have to really wonder, as you look at this, when you know that the CIA sponsored the color revolution in Ukraine in 2013 and 14, that they selected Ukraine's leaders, go to Victoria Nuland's leaked phone conversation where she and the US ambassador are deciding who can lead Ukraine. I mean, there's as much interference here as you could possibly imagine before you even get to Hunter Biden, Nancy Pelosi, John Kerry, and Mitt Romney, and all of their children who are employed, who earn millions from Ukrainian gas companies.